And welcome back to the Filthy Liberal Scum podcast. This is your host, Justin the Filthy Liberal Scum Rosario. This is the Fat Smug Bastard, Glenn Dewar.
Hello.
And we are Murphy-less this week. We do not have the Mike Murphy with us. He's off.
Mike Murphy.
He's off doing. Oh, what the hell is he doing? He's working.
He's printing.
He's printing.
He's printing.
Yes, he works at the New York Times, so he's printing a special something or another. I have no idea what the hell he's doing, but he's not here, so we'll have to move on.
There's some cayenne involved, and some magenta, and some yellow.
Anyway, all right, we have a whole bunch of stuff to get to this week, so we're going to get right into it. One, the Pope is retiring. Glenn here is uber Catholic, and I had to tell him this. Apparently, he did not have his Catholic bat phone on, so he didn't get the message until I told him.
I keep trying to tell him it only works if the Pope dies. Then we all get the implant message.
And so it's going ding, 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 ding.
No.
It was terrible.
The implants don't fire if the Pope retires.
Okay, apparently the Pope is very, very old, shocking, and is not in great health, also shocking, and does no longer feels that he can continue being the Pope and doing Popish type things. Did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because this is something he's actually talked about before. Is the idea that that maybe people shouldn't, popes shouldn't die in office if they're getting old and
infirm.
Right. Once you can't do the things that you need to do, because being Pope actually involves a lot of physical activity
and traveling and
traveling. Well, especially it's interesting because John Paul II added a lot of travel to the role.
Did he?
Yeah. It's certainly John Paul II did a lot more traveling than
well, he has a special Pope-mobile,
right, than most popes ever have, and John Paul II also really increased the amount of ecumenical work. Going and being involved with other religions and, dialoguing with people outside the Catholic Church.
You mean heathens?
Well, I mean, that's the thing is the Catholic Church has definitely changed the tone on stuff like that.
Yes. Jews are no longer devil-worshipping filthy heathens.
Well, yeah.
We don't have horns. I think that's official doctrine now. Jews don't actually have horns.
The Catholic Church never taught that Jews had horns. That was not a Catholic thing.
Yeah, that's true. They would have seen that when they burned us at the stake. They would have seen there was no horn. So I guess that'd be hard to push that particular story.
No,
unless they're flammable. The horn, maybe. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think, there's definitely been a lot of added responsibilities that involve traveling around and things like that. And I think,
just in case you're wondering if you're not Catholic or you don't pay attention to this stuff like I normally don't, a Pope retiring has not happened since the 1400s. So it's been like 700 years since this happened, and it's only happened, I think, 4 times. And this is the 4th time in the entire history of the Catholic Church. So that's a really, really long time and a very small amount of men who have retired.
Yeah.
So this is a very unusual thing for them to do. Usually they just stick it out until they croak.
Yeah, I mean the whole idea was kind of that it would be God's will when the Pope would change office, and so I think that Benedict wants it to be a little bit more practical and modern and say look there's a lot more going on now. You
can't have a Pope linger in his deathbed for 10 years and not get the job done because he's not actually dead.
Well, I think also it used to be that there was a lot more of the work of the papacy that could be done by cardinals and by other people. And what's happened is when you have 24-hour news media and you have television cameras everywhere, and everybody always interested in, seeing what the Pope is doing and hearing what the Pope is doing, and there's a lot more exposure. And I think that you can't have that same quiet period at the end of life when, a lot more people are taking on the responsibilities. It used to be everything happened at the speed of mail. So, letters would get written, other people would be involved helping to edit them or whatever, and, it was all just a lot slower. And that, now that everything is in the here and now,
so basically what you're saying is the Pope couldn't keep up with Twitter.
Pretty much. Well, the Pope couldn't, you just can't have an elderly pope in a modern world.
Hmm.
You can't have somebody who's that old in a modern world having to really lead the church in a way that 100 years ago the pope didn't need to lead the church in the same visible way.
Right.
It really more of that role could be
Delegated.
dispersed. Yeah,
Right.
delegated.
Well, we'll see. Now, one thing about the Pope that a lot of people are very excited that he's leaving because he was not a very popular person. He was kind of polarizing.
He'd never be as popular as his predecessor.
So sucks for him.
John Paul II. First of all, was he started out as a very young pope, and he lived a long time, and therefore just the years made people familiar with John Paul II. And then he did a lot of revolutionary things. Like I said, he was traveling everywhere. He was dialoguing with the other religions. So it was very hard for Benedict, who was kind of a quiet scholarly type, to keep up with that. He wasn't going to be as popular. It just wasn't possible.
Sucks for him. But and a lot of people are hoping that the next pope will have a much more liberal take on, like, say, gay rights and whatnot. But there's really no way to know until the person actually gets elected and pops in there and whatnot. But we'll see how that goes. That would be fantastic if the next pope was much more liberal and much more open-minded and say, you know what, we don't have to like the gays, but we don't have to actively persecute them and just leave it alone. But
do you want to talk about the conservative versus liberal thing in the church and where it's going and why it is where it is?
Do you?
I mean,
no. Look at that. They all said no. Sorry,
okay,
we're gonna have to move on to the next topic.
Okay. There are reasons why the church is where it is right now, but we'll go into them some.
That's a story for another time.
Okay.
All right. Tomorrow is the State of the Union. From all reports that have been getting leaked so far, is Obama is going to slam the Republicans very, very hard. I will believe that when I see it. But he has been in campaign mode since the campaign ended. Like, he's been really kind of nonstop digging at the Republicans. The Republicans are in a terribly weakened state right now. They're extremely fractured, and Obama's been applying a lot of pressure to those fracture points to hopefully split them in two. The idea is to get, you have your establishment Republicans, and then you have your Tea Party freaks, which makes it interesting that the response from the Republicans is a Tea Party freak, and the Tea Party response is the Tea Party freakiest, which would be Rand Paul. So you got Marco Rubio and Rand Paul. Marco Rubio is supposed to be the Republican savior because he's young, he's hip, and he speaks Espanol. That's all bullshit. Doesn't matter if he delivers the rebuttal in Spanish or not. If you deliver a shit sandwich in a nice Taco Bell wrapping, I don't care. I'm still not going to eat it. And Rand Paul is just fucking crazy. Well, you know what? Rand Paul's not crazy. He's an opportunist piece of shit.
He's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Well, all right. No, but he's crazy. But he's crazy because it works. He's crazy because his father created that persona for him.
I don't know. I think he grew up in a bed full of crazy, and
he's just permanently damaged now.
I think Rand Paul is a bit dippy. There's definitely something. But I'll tell you something. I don't know if it was a good idea to use Marco Rubio at this time. I think
well, the last couple of guys who went out there did not do well, and it hurt them.
No, but I'm talking about this specific year. If I were Marco Rubio, I would have said that I have to go investigate the prairie chicken or something, because this is a very bad. First of all, we're very far away from any presidential elections. We're far away even from the midterms, and Marco Rubio is giving this speech right after the 2 weeks after the inauguration of the president's second term. And so,
historic second term.
Well, what is Marco Rubio being asked to do? He's being asked to tell the American people, you're wrong. Right? That's the whole point of Marco Rubio's response.
It's like, we just had an election. You voted this way. We're still right because I speak Spanish.
But the purpose of the rebuttal this year is to tell the American people that they are wrong. Anytime you're coming in right after a re-election of a president, you don't want to be the one giving that rebuttal speech. And I think it's crazy. The Republicans should have used somebody who they knew had no intentions of going anywhere.
Someone disposable.
Yeah, right. Someone disposable or somebody or a has-been. You know,
Like John Boehner.
You know.
All right, sort of. Or Jindal. Well, no, he's kind of researching.
They're hoping they can resurrect him. So, you know, I mean, but not Rubio, right? Rubio is somebody who they're hoping will be able to go somewhere eventually. Rubio certainly thinks he's going to be president someday. So, you know, I mean, it's a crazy thing for Rubio to do this.
And just to show you that the Republican Party hasn't learned a goddamn thing since the election, the entire concept of Marco Rubio being like, you know, the big savior of the Republican Party is pure tokenism. They're not changing anything about their policies. They're just delivering it in Spanish and in the form of a Spanish-speaking Republican, and hoping that this will sway Republicans, will sway Latino voters.
Well, we have to see where the immigration thing goes, and how much Rubio has to do with it. I think there's still a story to be told. I think Rubio is honestly trying to push the party into a survivable direction. I think, you know, Rubio...
but he's just not going to be able to do it. They can't. There's no way. The Republican Party cannot, like, just suddenly throw itself on top of the bandwagon for immigration. They're just not going to be able to pull it off. They would have to sacrifice too much of their base, and their base is very, very white, very, very hateful, and very, very old. And
I think it was interesting that Rubio convinced Rush Limbaugh that he had some good ideas in terms of what the Gang of Eight was proposing. So I think we don't have the answer yet. I think that, you know, right now there's whether or not they want to admit it, what you see with Rand Paul and Marco Rubio is you see a civil war in the Republican Party. And they can try to be as friendly as they want to be about it, but there's half of the Republican Party that says, hey, you know, we do need to stop being the stupid party. We need to stop losing voters. And there's the other half of the Republican Party that wants to keep falling off the edge. Right now, you know, 2014 is their best chance to make serious gains and to become dominant party again, because all of the winds should be blowing at their backs in 2014. Everything should be prepared to go their way. And the question is, you know, are they going to keep talking about legitimate rape and things like that? And, you know, it looks like even after January 3rd, when everything should be new again, it looks like they're still screwing up, and it looks like they're still, you know, saying things that are really objectionable. And I don't know, you know, it's...
Well, Karl Rove has something to say about that. It's not going to fly.
But even that, I mean, you know, the hilarious thing is, even with Karl Rove trying to filter the Republican Party, and Karl Rove's attempt to save it is so ham-handed that he's just pissing everybody off, and they're reacting. You know, like you have all these people reacting against him, and they're like digging their heels in.
And remember, Karl Rove isn't looking for Republicans who are smarter or don't believe in legitimate rape and all that. No, he's just looking for one smart enough not to say it out loud.
Right.
That's all he wants. He doesn't want to change. He just wants them to shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, that's the sad thing is, yeah, he wants them not to say it out loud.
Yeah. And the Tea Party thinks that they're so you know, star-spangled awesome, to steal a line from Newsroom, then, you know, they're God-blessed and everything, that they can just keep spewing their same old bullshit about, you know, rape this and, you know, little fetuses inside your womb if you have abortions. That was disgusting. Did you see that one?
I missed that one.
Ugh, there was some Republican who was going on and on about how, you know, every time you have abortion, there's a little dead fetus to stay in your womb. There's embedded in the wall of your vagina. It's like,
Wait, after the abortion?
Yes.
How is this?
No. I don't know. The entire Republican Party.
More new Republican science?
Yeah, they've completely failed biology 101. Like any biology teacher, like even Republican biology teachers have to look at these guys and be like, "Oh, stop talking." But no. Yep. Rape is not so bad, and you know, pregnancy is awesome, but we don't have to help you with the child afterwards. We just make sure you have it, you slut. You know, so as long as they're doing that,
yeah, I mean it's crazy. It's crazy.
It's awesome. I love it. I'm so looking forward to the Civil War.
My prediction is still that we lose a lot of seats in 2014, just because that's the direction that all of the all of the proper channels should be going towards the idea.
I'm betting that the Tea Party, which completely dominates the primaries, will elect or try to elect as many freaks as possible. And the freakier they get, the easier it's going to be to beat them in an election.
It could be. It could be. I mean, you know, if this guy in Georgia, this guy Brown in Georgia wins.
Which one is he?
Brown, he said some crazy stuff. I can't remember exactly what he said, but he wants to run against Saxby Shambles. He wants to do a primary challenge against him, and you know the polls show that if there's if you want to get a Democrat to win in Georgia, your best chance is to get one of these real kooks. So I mean it's and of Georgia of all states. If you were watching the numbers coming up to the election, and I was watching them every single day, freaking out. But if you're watching the numbers going up to the election, Georgia was interesting because Georgia started leaning way lefter than it should have. Like Georgia was starting to not be purple, but it was like reddish purple. Like Georgia was purpler than all of the other red states, all the other southern states.
Well, that's because Dee lives there.
Oh, is that what it is?
The Irish wench lives there. She has a 200-mile zone around her.
She's a one-woman machine. But
hi, Dee.
So no, but yes, something is definitely going on in Georgia, and if there's a demographic shift, like the worst possible thing you can do now is to nominate like a real Tea Party whack job.
Well, that's what they're going to want to go for, and the Tea Party really has a lock on the primaries. They really have a lock on the nomination, and they're just going to keep electing those nut jobs to go out there and lose.
This early on, I'm still putting my money against us in 2014 just because
statistics say otherwise. But
statistics say, and there's just so much time between now and November of 2014 that the law of averages should play out.
Right.
Would be what I would say. But I don't know. I mean, they are doing some wacky things, so we'll see.
Well, I guess we'll find out. All right, we're going to move on to the next Republican piece of annoyance. Back in 2011, there was the debt ceiling crisis. And it was completely artificial. It was completely made up by the Republicans. Right. And the Republicans forced through the Super Congress.
Which made no sense.
Yeah, it was just stupid. And the whole idea was they came up with this sequester. The sequester is a set of cuts, spending cuts to, both Republican and Democratic, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, things, programs that neither party would be particularly happy about. Actually would be extremely miserable about. But it turned out that most of the cuts that would affect us is discretionary spending, that it won't cut into Medicare or Social Security or any of the stuff that Republicans normally want us to cut. And there's ways to make it less painful. It won't be great, but it won't be crippling. On the other hand, it's like $500 billion out of a military's budget. The sad thing about this is it won't actually reduce the military budget. It will just slow how fast the military budget is growing. But that's neither here or there. It's still $500 billion out of the military's budget. The Republicans agreed to this because they were sure that they were going to be able to force through an agreement that would give them what they wanted, and they would get the debt ceiling and blah, blah, blah. This is when John Boehner said, I got 98% of everything I wanted. Glenn actually was quite upset about this at the time until I explained to him that the sequester was going to happen at the time, and it was going to hurt the Republicans way more than it was going to hurt the Democrats, which turned out to be the case. And now the Republicans desperately tried to weasel out of it, and they couldn't because they needed Democrats to sign off on it. Democrats are like, no, we're perfectly fine.
Well, their answer is ridiculous. Their answer has been, we like all of the cuts in the sequester that hurt your side.
Right,
the American people.
Yeah, stop the cuts that don't hurt us, but we'll go through with the rest of them because we want to compromise with you. That's the idea.
Compromise.
That's the compromise.
We do everything we want, we do nothing you want. That's the compromise.
But they couldn't weasel out of it. And now they're at the point where the sequester is going. They pushed off the sequester for a couple of months so they can get past the fiscal cliff thing again.
But this is what drives me nuts about this whole process, is that fiscal cliff, super Congress,
artificial,
sequester,
all artificial crisis.
You know, these words are nowhere in law and in the Constitution, and politicians say them, and the media repeats them as if these are things that have always existed, and this is part of our government. You know, one thing I've heard a lot of politicians saying, a lot of Republicans saying is, this is not a time for a sequester. Like, there have been so many times in the past when we've done this, and, you know, this is an ordinary process in American politics, and this is just not an opportune time for it. No, this is craziness that we've never done before, and well,
that's the thing with the media. The media loves this stuff. They eat it up. They're eating it up.
They love having new catchphrases.
Yeah, and they love having these you know, deadlines and crisis because it rivets people. Meanwhile, and they just report on it like it's perfectly normal. The media has normalized the crisis management, the process of, you know, governing by crisis that the Republicans have completely invented. They've completely made this up specifically so they can try and push through what they want because they make crises, and then they say, well, no, the only way to solve it is to cut Social Security in half, or we have to privatize Medicare. You know, it's the only way we can do it. And meanwhile, it's completely made up. And the media just went right along with this because it makes for great ratings. It makes for great news. It makes for great television. So it's very, very irritating that the Republicans got away with this, and they're continuing to get away with this. And the second there's a Republican in the White House, oh, no, we can't do it anymore. Liberals won't be able to do it. Democrats won't be able to do this. It'll be absolutely verboten for Democrats to do this. You know, if a Democrat threatens a government shutdown, treason! Treason! But now it's like, well, you know, that's just how we do things now. Until there's a Republican in charge, then it doesn't count. But what they kind of painted themselves into a corner because the offer that they've been getting is like, sure, we'll stop the sequester as long as we can raise taxes. Well, they don't want to do that.
But you know, that's the other thing that drives me nuts is people keep calling it raising taxes, and Obama's talking about closing loopholes. Closing loopholes is not raising.
Well, taxes. They call it revenue increase,
and it would be an increase in revenue,
right? And they've conflated an increase in revenue with an increase in tax.
But the irony is, these are all the things the Republicans said they wanted to do under the plan for Mitt Romney. This is what they said. They said they wanted to increase revenue only through closing loopholes.
Not that they would ever tell you what the loopholes were.
Right. They wouldn't name what loopholes they wanted to close.
Not one.
They said
not
they
a
wanted
single
to raise
one.
They wanted to raise revenue only by closing loopholes. That was the only appropriate way to raise revenue. And now that taxes have been increased infinitesimally on the rich,
suddenly the tax increase debate is settled. We're not going to talk about any more tax increases.
Now no more revenues. And but it's interesting because at one point they were supposedly against these loopholes. Well, if they were against the loopholes, why are they suddenly now in favor of the loopholes? And you know, some of the loopholes, I mean, you know, this is another thing that it's. I mean, they have to be depending upon the well-known incompetence of Democrats to get their message across. Because some of the loopholes Republicans are defending stink like rotting fish, and you know, like. You can never defend these things, like the exemptions for corporate jets,
right?
You know, like being able to write off your jet, or your yacht,
your second yacht, and stupid
stuff
like that.
Like crazy things like that are things the American people
like super 1% stuff.
The American people might want to bite you, you know. I mean, these are things that would really make the American people angry to hear you defending. So I mean, I don't get Like I said, they have to be assuming that Democrats are going to be their classic democratic selves and snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. They have to be assuming Democrats just aren't going to push the issue and talk about what these loopholes are. And I don't know. I'm hoping the Democrats will do what supposedly Obama is going to say, says he's going to do, and start really making a case out of these things. And if you really start exposing what these loopholes are and talking about them, and talking about the unfairness of them while you're trying to close them, I think, Republicans are going to either have to, agree with Obama or die trying. They're going to end up getting themselves killed in the polls.
We shouldn't be so lucky. Well, keep your fingers crossed. we'll see how that goes. And I'm really looking forward to the State of the Union because I'm sure Obama's really going to press them on that point. You know, it's like, you don't want to sequester. Well, these are the things that you have to do to avoid sequester. Otherwise, it's going to happen. It's in law. You can't push it off indefinitely. And then, of course, right after that, there'll be the new budget fight. There'll be another budget battle. That's like, oh, no, you have to cut everything we want, and we won't give you an inch because we're Republicans, and that's how we rule these days. Whatever. And then, of course, they'll blame it on Obama. There hasn't been a budget in 4 years because of Obama, because the Republicans won't give any ground whatsoever, so therefore, it's his fault. And speaking of blaming Obama, Roger Ailes is the CEO of Fox. He is the man that was hired by the right-wing machine specifically to build a media empire that would service the Republican and conservative goals. Okay? And it worked fantastically. You know, Fox News literally keeps the right wing afloat. If it wasn't for Fox News, they would have tanked, like, over 10 years ago, they would have tanked. You know, Bush would have been...
Fox News has many, many people believing some very, very bizarre things.
Yeah, one of which we'll discuss later. And having to do with solar power and Germany and the United States. Funniest thing I've heard in, like, weeks. But we'll get to that. So Roger Ailes realized, obviously, that in the 2012 election, he completely fucked up. He failed miserably. All right, his propaganda machine bought its own propaganda, and so did the GOP. They bought into the propaganda that they knew was propaganda, but somehow still managed to internalize as if it was real. Okay, and they completely screwed the pooch. That's why it was such a bloodbath. You know, if it had been for all the heavy-duty redistricting and gerrymandering the Republicans did, they would have lost the House easily. Okay.
Well, they did lose the popular vote.
They did, but they would have actually lost the seats.
Right.
You know, if it wasn't for the gerrymandering, the Republicans would have lost the House, and the Democrats would have continued to gain in the Senate the way they did, and that would have been a vicious blow to the GOP. Yay, gerrymandering! So Roger Ailes had an interview with the New Republic, and in his interview, he was very upset at excuse me, at President Obama. And his problem with President Obama is that he is turning black people against white people, and the middle class against rich. He's dividing the country with his hateful rhetoric, blah, blah, blah. Specifically, the president likes to divide people into groups. He's too busy getting the middle class to hate rich people, blacks to hate whites. He is busy trying to get everybody to hate each other. We need to get along. Now, Fox News exists to incite racial resentment.
Yeah.
Oh my God, does it exist to incite resentment against black people, Spanish people, Muslims, gay people, women? Doesn't matter what it is. If you are not a white, male, heterosexual Christian, well, then you're the enemy in some way, fashion, or form. You are the enemy. This is what this is Fox's meat and potatoes. Their audience is Mike Marsh.
Well, you know, the thing is, black people don't hate white people. Black people hate Republicans.
Yes, but as far as they're concerned, all white people should be Republicans. So as far as they're concerned, black people should hate white people.
There's a big difference there. Black people don't hate white people. They hate Republicans.
You know, and it's insane that he would actually come out and say this, but he was dead serious. And his whole point is that Fox needs to...
When do you ever hear Obama talking about black people and white people? Like, ever? When do you ever hear any discussion on race from our first black president? Like, he's actually been pushed into a corner where he can't talk about it. I mean, you know, I think one of the things that history is going to note is that Obama, the first black president, could not talk about race relations in America in any way without everybody jumping on him. You know, like,
oh, he's an angry black man from Africa.
And like, he's like the least angry person ever. Like, well,
that's what makes it so funny.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, he's not angry at all. You know, like,
it's like they'll have a picture of him sneezing and they'll just put it up and says "Angry Obama." And it's like, no, that's him sneezing. You know, same thing with Michelle Obama. They caught her like halfway through a yawn. Angry Michelle. You know, this angry black people. They're all angry.
But I mean, it's so divorced from reality. Like you can't even stretch to make the case.
Well, that's what makes the Fox bubble so awesome. And Ailes should know better, and I guess he sort of does, but he does control it. He does control the news there. And the fact that they were so deeply in the bubble suggests that he is in his own bubble, and he's not really prepared to come out of it, because the point of this interview was that the GOP needs, and Fox specifically, needs to moderate its tone when it comes to Latinos, and how they have Fox News Latino, which was started in 2010, and how they want to appeal to the Spanish folk because they're really more conservative. They're more in tune with conservatives than they are with liberals, and of course he follows this up with. The fact is, Republicans have a lot more opportunity for them. If I'm going to risk my life to run over the fence to get into America, I want to win. I think Fox News will articulate that. I read that, and I just immediately was like, completely oblivious. Completely oblivious. As he's talking about how awesome, Republicans are going to be for Latinos, he completely insults them in the same breath. There are over 50 million Hispanics in this country. 11 million of them, roughly, are here illegally. So that is 1/5 of all Spanish people here illegally, but those are the ones he's talking about. Never mind the other 40 million!
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the crazy things they do is that, and I caught a mutual, someone we were both talking to yesterday, said something that I've heard from Republican politicians, and that is, well, why did they lose the Latino vote? Because Democrats are willing to give everything away. You can't run against Santa Claus. And, what is inherently in that idea is the idea that most Hispanics or all Hispanics they're all on welfare or something. Like that's craziness.
Lou really said that?
Shh. I didn't say her name.
Lou's my stepfather-in-law. No. Lou doesn't like talking to me anymore about politics. He's the Glenn Beck Fox News person I regularly refer to when I talk about my stepfather. That's the guy. That's my wife's stepfather. And he's really sucked into the Fox bubble.
Well, yeah. So he was the one who had the "you can't run against Santa Claus" quote. And in response to the idea that that Latinos overwhelmingly voted for, well, I don't know if it was about Latinos overwhelmingly voting for Obama. I think it was about Latinos, and not just winning the election in general. But it's a crazy idea. Like either 53%, 52 or 53% of Americans are all on welfare, or
which would still be mostly white people.
Yeah.
That's one of the funny things when they talk about all those lazy people. They're always really talking about minorities, black people, Spanish people. But when they talk about all the people that are on food stamps, it's still primarily white people. And all those entitlements and this, that, and the other. Those are white people they're talking about.
But I mean, even if you don't talk about the white people on welfare, even if you don't talk about that at all, the very notion that you can win a majority of the Latino or black vote by giving away welfare
is insulting.
Insinuates that somehow a vast majority of black people and a vast majority of Latino people are on welfare. And when you say that, you are going to infuriate the hard-working black and Latino people out there, who most certainly the majority of which are not on welfare.
And when you point out to them that what they just said was racist, there you go again, playing the race card. You liberals always playing the race card.
Because you say something racist, and we're going to point out that, oh my God, I think a lot of them don't even realize how racist they are. They think...
Well, they're so buried in white privilege that they don't consider it racist.
Well, you know what it is? They think, I'm not racist. I'm just talking about the facts that all black and Latino people are on welfare. Like, they believe it so hard that they don't think it's racist. They think it's factual. And they don't understand. It's racist because it's not factual. It's racist because you make the assumption that all black and Latino people are on welfare, and clearly they can't be. They're not.
Go ahead and try explaining that to them, though. See, Lou doesn't really like discussing politics with me anymore. He used to send me his little emails that he would get from like his buddies who would get them from Glenn Beck and Newsmax and World Net Daily, blah, blah, blah. And the last two he sent me were going on and on and on about, Hispanics this and Hispanics that. And I wrote back to him the first time. I said, your grandkids are Hispanic. My children, I am half Puerto Rican. That makes your two grandchildren part Hispanic. You should probably stop talking about them that way. It's insulting. And then he sent another one, and I sent back an email, something to the effect of, if you send me another one of these fucking emails, you and me are going to have words, and you're really not going to like it. And then he stopped sending me emails.
The thing is, honestly, he's a great guy. He really is a very nice guy.
He used to be a very nice guy, and then he really got sucked into Fox.
The thing is, he really is a nice guy. He really is a great guy. The problem is he's just woefully misinformed.
Well, he's also really angry. He did not used to be this angry.
Well, he's angry because he believes these things. That if all of those things were true that they tell you on Fox,
I'd be angry too.
Yeah,
that's what I mean, though. Like 10 years ago, Lou was not like that. He was still like, "Oh yes, you need guns to protect yourself from the government," but he didn't really press the point. He didn't make a big deal about it. But then conservatives, then he found out that conservative ideals tend to do things like bankrupt the country and start unnecessary wars. And then he started getting very angry and defensive, which is, pretty much what happened to all conservatives. They all found out that everything they believe in is terrible for the country. And
but they don't believe that.
They understand that. But instead of actually facing that, instead of facing the reality that they got everything they wanted, through the 2000s, they had everything they wanted. It was awesome. It was a great time to be a conservative. And then it all fell apart. Right. Because of conservatism, and they just suddenly got slapped in the face with the reality of everything I believe is terrible for the country.
Well, but
whose fault is it?
They have an excuse for everything.
Well, that's what I mean. Like it's
George Bush really wasn't that conservative.
Yeah, well,
that's really what they were dreaming of.
But then they started finding
a lot of money.
They found all these excuses. They found all these reasons where it wasn't really their fault. It was the liberals.
Mind you, they didn't start a Tea Party and start screaming they wanted to take back their country under Bush.
No, of course not.
But supposedly they never really liked Bush, and he was always too spendy for them, and
it was Obama's recession 2 months after he was elected. It was Obama's recession all of a sudden.
Somehow, all of these congressmen who voted in everything George Bush asked for, like Paul Ryan, somehow they are just fine.
Yeah,
they are just dandy.
It's amazing, but and that's when they really went into the whole perpetually aggrieved victim mode. Everything is someone else's fault.
I think there is some of that sense that the country used to be run by white people, and they don't they just don't like that it's things can't be that way anymore.
Well, yeah, but they can't say that, so they find other ways to express it.
But I mean, that's why they're perpetually aggrieved, because they feel like their version of what the culture should be dominant forever.
Right. And when they complain about white culture's dying, and you say, "What's white culture?" Oh,
right.
And really, what they want to say is when the niggers knew their place. That's what they want to say. But they can't actually say that, because then you say, "Oh, you're a fucking racist," and they can't pretend that they're not.
Yeah.
So they're stuck. They want to complain about how much they miss their white culture, but they don't know how to express it without actually being the racist scumbags they are, which I find to be incredibly hilarious.
Right. What they miss is white dominance.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're still dominant. They're just not as dominant.
Well, no, I mean, the fact is,
and in 18 years, they're not going to be dominant at all, because most of the kids born in this country in the last year were not white.
The thing is, you can win elections now without winning the white vote, and that's something that drives them crazy. They don't like that. They don't like the fact that I mean, you saw it. They practically said it. Well, he's not the real president because he didn't win the white vote. If you watch all of them right afterwards, they were all very aggrieved that that Obama didn't win the white vote and somehow he won the presidency, and that shouldn't be allowed.
It's that's not right. That's not the American way. It's not the real American way. He's a Kenyan.
Right, so, we're losing the traditional America, as O'Reilly said.
Fuck O'Reilly. Actually, I wouldn't fuck O'Reilly. I wouldn't fuck O'Reilly with your dick. Anyway.
No, thank you.
Speaking of crazy people, we're going to move on to this week's Gun Nut of the Week. This week's Gun Nut of the Week is Alan Keyes. And Alan Keyes, I'm not entirely familiar with who Alan Keyes is. I just know he's like a real right-winger. He's black, and he's completely insane. Past that, I don't really know anything about him.
What's funny about Republicans is every time they find the one black conservative, they will do anything they possibly can to promote this person, regardless of what their qualifications are.
Like Herman Cain.
Right, because they try and, they want desperately to show...
Look, we have a black guy. He's my black friend. Some of my best friends are black. Don't call me racist.
Right, I mean, one of my favorites was the guy J.C. Watts. He was the third-ranking Republican, and everybody was all excited. Oh, look, the third-ranking Republican is black, like in the House of Representatives, and they were talking about this, and J.C. Watts was a little unbalanced, so the funniest thing is they asked J.C. Watts' father what he thought about it. What do you think about the fact that your son is the third highest Republican in Congress? And J.C. Watts' father said, a black man voting Republican is like a chicken voting for Colonel Sanders.
Is that who said that?
Yes.
That's where the quote comes from?
It actually is an actual quote from J.C. Watts' father about J.C. Watts being a Republican.
Wow, I'm sure their Thanksgiving dinners were tense.
But, Alan Keyes is another example of somebody who, as far as they were concerned, he's black and conservative. We need to promote him as much as we possibly can to show that we're not racist. And Alan Keyes is pretty goddamn loony.
As we will listen to right now. Now, this is Alan Keyes talking on the Talk to Solomon show, whatever that is. So it's Dr. Alan Keyes. You got to remember the doctor part. It's very important that he's a doctor. He's talking about gun control and why Obama's pushing gun control now.
I find it really suspicious that at this juncture, when it's just commonly being discussed that there are all kinds of possibilities out there that may lead to serious strains on the infrastructure of order in our society. Yet,
basically what he's saying is that we're doomed! Society's going to collapse any second! The end of the world crap that they usually spin. So that's what he's talking about.
At that moment, you're going to tell people, this is the time to give up your weapons, so that when that happens, you'll fall prey to the criminals and the psychotic folks who want to take advantage of it. That's insane. And anybody who suggests it, any government official, any senator, Feinstein, Obama, I look at them and I say, you want us to be prey to those folks. You want people to be defenseless in that moment.
And there's a reason why. It's a very good one.
I say that for two reasons. It gives them an excuse to consolidate despotic, tyrannical, totalitarian power.
Tyranny!
That's step number one. And it also accords with what appears to be their vision of the future world, in which by some means they are going to cull the herd so that instead of having billions, we'll only have hundreds of millions of human beings on the face of the planet.
If you see the video, it looks like he's just about to smile because he knows he's full of shit.
I don't think he does.
I don't know. Soylent Green is people.
The way these people are talking, their project for disarmament is intended to make sure that people will be slaughtered by the thousands and the hundreds of thousands.
We're out. We're out of the closet. He just exposed the entire liberal agenda. The vast left-wing conspiracy to wipe out hundreds and hundreds of millions and billions of people on this planet.
So the amazing thing is Alan Keyes seems to have been reading the Turner Diaries, which is quite ironic considering the Turner Diaries
is a race war.
Are pretty damn racist. But apparently Alan Keyes' vision of the future is based in the Turner Diaries. I guess he's going to be on the white side of the race war? I don't know. But, in all fairness, it is true that the liberal version of the future will depopulate the earth. I'm going to admit this right now.
Soil the greenest people.
The liberal version of the future is going to eliminate billions of people from the planet.
Well, yeah, they'll be living on Mars.
No. It's called industrialization. When you actually bring a nation from third world into first world status. See, now in the 1960s, we were all afraid of, liberals. I'll admit we're wrong. Liberals were all afraid of, the increasing world population and starvation.
Well, it is.
And, they didn't want people to starve, which, according to Republicans, makes liberals bad people. But, there was a real fear that, the world's population was going to get out of control. And then we started discovering something, and that was that once people start having a higher standard of living,
they stop having so many kids. In rural farm communities and places where there's 2 reasons why you have a lot of kids. One is if you have a high infant mortality rate, you have a lot of kids, so that you're hoping some of them will survive. Yeah, that was the tactic my grandmother used. 15 aunts and uncles.
And
the woman's uterus was a clown car.
The other thing is, if you're doing farm work,
you need the bodies.
You need as many people working the farm as you possibly can. So that was another reason why people had a lot of children. And so, you discover that once you get people not doing that anymore, once people's standard of living comes up in the industrialized nations, they all start having 2 kids.
And it's also a matter of access to birth control.
Yeah.
If you give them access to birth control, they will not want to have 10, 15 different kids. They'll be fine with 2 or 3. They'll be like, all right, I'm good.
It's true. The liberal version of the future could have billions less people. Billions! But I'm afraid the Turner Diary style race war mass extinction that Keyes is talking about is not quite the goal.
Yeah, so basically,
we just don't want people to keep starving to death. Which, apparently...
You fucking liberal.
Keyes thinks is wonderful.
You're a fucking liberal. God damn you.
But
why do you hate America so much?
I know, right?
Why do you hate America?
I hate America. Because I think people starving is bad. But
anyway, now, the other good news, because as long as people like Alan Keyes and Alex Jones and Ted Nugent are the face of the gun proliferation movement, they're not going to do well, despite the belief that of the NRA that they call it the Connecticut. I'm sorry.
By the way, Alan Keyes is part of the curse.
Which curse?
You don't know about the curse. The gay curse.
What's the gay curse?
The gay curse is that a lot of the most virulent anti-gay Republican voices had gay kids.
Did he really?
So Alan Keyes has a lesbian daughter. And, like Phyllis Schlafly has a gay son. And I wish I could remember them all. There's like quite a list. There's quite a list of...
Good for them.
And by the way, this is proof of God's existence. Justin thinks God doesn't exist. But I'm telling you, Alan Keyes having a lesbian daughter is just evidence that God not only exists, but he's laughing his ass off.
Mock, 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 mock.
Mock, 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 mock. Like, I smited you.
All right. Another bit of good news when it comes to the NRA is that the NRA is rapidly losing its mojo. It's still outspending gun control groups by a lot because the gun industry is giving them tons and tons of money to keep selling their guns for them. But it's starting to hurt politicians to be associated with the NRA. Let's see. Public Policy Polling's latest national survey, including an interesting question about the nation's leading lobbying organization of guns. Much has been made in recent weeks about the NRA's political strength, but PPP's newest national poll finds more voters consider their endorsement to be a negative than a positive. 39% say they would be less likely to vote for a candidate who had the NRA support, to just 26% who say they would be more likely. Okay, so it's starting to hurt. Is there a cat behind my head?
Yes, Miss Tish will be taking the place of Mike Murphy this week.
She's much cuter.
Miss Tish has a lot of political opinions. She just doesn't talk about them very much.
So, and that's really the way to kill the NRA when it comes to their influence in politics, is you make them toxic to politicians. It doesn't matter how much money they've spent on their previous campaigns, how buddy-buddy they were, and how happy they were to tout their A rating from the NRA. Once it becomes a negative to voters, the politicians are gonna say adios.
Well, I think we have to see where things are very much in a state of flux right now.
Well, you got to remember the 2012 election, the NRA had, what was it? 1% return,
right?
On their investments.
And that's something Murphy and I were talking about this the other day. That one election does not a new reality make.
No, yes, but the trend. But I mean, this also includes this trend.
Karl Rove had a really bad year, and the NRA had a really bad year. But the fact is, both of those are not symptoms of Karl Rove or of the NRA. People were not voting against guns everywhere. People were voting against Republicans everywhere, and that just happened to be where all the NRA endorsements were, which was really bizarre because Obama did nothing about gun control. The NRA should have been completely leaving him alone. But apparently the NRA decided to go crazy land anyway.
Wayne LaPierre is not really what you call stable.
Well, it was interesting because Wayne LaPierre in a recent interview started talking about other things besides guns, just proving that it has nothing to do. It's not just about guns. He's on board with the whole crazy wagon, but he's on board with all of these Republican ideas. They had a bad year. What's going to happen in 2014? Like I said, as far as I see, the wind should be at their back. It should be easier for them to recover. The other thing is, traditionally in American politics, whenever there's an incident like this, the NRA loses favorability. We have to wait until there's distance between Sandy Hook and, with time, it's hard to say what's going to happen with the NRA. The other thing that doesn't make any sense, especially considering how much news has been out there about the NRA, is that recent polls have shown
that people still think the NRA speaks for them for some reason.
That the NRA is way more popular than any of their current positions. Like people don't understand that the NRA does not support your views. Like they'll say, yes, the NRA. More people believe the NRA supports their views than believe Obama does. But the views
that they support are not the ones the NRA supports at all.
But when you ask them about universal background checks and things like that, they're in favor of the Obama position. It doesn't make any sense. I think it could be one of the big cloudy issues that I keep seeing is the cloudy issue on what are the private gun sales. And I think the problem is we just don't have... There needs to be more data out there in front of the American people that the gun show loophole is being used to buy a lot of guns. And clearly...
40%.
Right, but when you say that it's not clear... Are 40% of the gun sales going on between granddads and grandsons? And, some guy...
Well, it wouldn't be at a gun show, then.
Well, right, that wouldn't be at a gun show, but then, maybe somebody, who's just looking, saying, something, a woman saying, my husband just passed away, and, I'm going to give his guns to his best friend to sell at the gun show. Those kinds of private sales. The NRA is trying to portray all of the private sales that are exempted from the background checks as those kinds of sales.
Which is bullshit.
Right, but that's the thing is the Democrats haven't done enough to show that when you talk about 40% of gun trafficking is happening by the gun show loophole, you have to show that it's really, it's businesses doing it. It is businesses. LaPierre keeps trying to say that businesses are doing the background checks. No. When you have 40% of the sales going on without background checks at gun shows, clearly there are people in business to sell guns who are making a living selling guns. Not just, I'm selling this extra gun I had around the house. Right. People who are clearly making a living selling guns, not doing background checks. So, that information is not out there, and that could be why the American people are confused about it. Because the American people might believe that they agree with the NRA's position. that they think that, any commercial dealer should be doing background checks, but that, some guy selling his best friend his gun should be exempt. I think personally one of the smartest things we can do, it's gonna.
Well, not for nothing. I don't see why those sales should be exempt at all. It's like if I'm selling an extra gun that I have, I could still be selling it to a crazy person. I can still be selling it to someone, a known fugitive. I'm not checking. I don't care. It's not my problem. But meanwhile, I'm handing a gun over to someone who's going to go use it to shoot up a building.
See, I think that that's a sensible thing that you just said. That you're right. That the problem is,
although it is a bit impractical.
The problem is that, in a sense, it's a straw buyer kind of a thing. You have a gun that you went through a background check for, and then you're selling it to your best friend. Well, how do we know your best friend should be having a gun? Maybe you're not the best judge of whether your best friend should have a gun. But, the problem is the American people are sympathetic to the idea that if I just want to sell something I have to my friend or give it to my friend, somebody I'm close to, I don't want to have to go through. I shouldn't have to file any federal paperwork.
No, but at the same time, I have to do it for a car.
Right. First of all, cars are a privilege, not a right. But second of all, people just don't like the idea of it. Now, what I would say is, I think the car model might be the best idea, and that is in terms of, instead of focusing just on the background checks, just on saying to people, look, you have to register who owns the firearm, and you have to have registration papers with the serial number, just like a car. And if you transfer ownership for any reason, that includes not only sales, but giving it away. If you transfer ownership of the gun, you have to file the papers and you have to change the registration on the gun. I would say, don't do the whole thing with don't start charging ludicrously high registration fees. I would even say don't charge any registration fee whatsoever. Do it as part of the ATF's budget. Because, that'll stop people from being as resistant to it. But you also might want to say to people, look, it's in your own best interest. If you transfer ownership of a gun to somebody else, what's going to happen to that gun? It's going to come back to you if something does happen with that gun. So it's in your own best interest to have registration. It's in your own best interest to say, okay, just like with a car. I know when I sell a car or I give away a car to a junkyard or a charity organization.
Anything that happens after that is not your problem.
I feel much better. Once those registration papers are signed, I feel much better knowing that if that car is parked somewhere it doesn't belong or something, it doesn't come back to me. Right. It doesn't involve me because I have changed, with the state, I have changed my registration.
You have a piece of paper saying, not my problem.
Not my problem anymore. And I think that, that's something that if people realized, it might be a good idea with a gun also. Because just like a car, guns have a tendency to end up doing stuff that you don't want to be involved with after you're done owning them. I think that's another way that, that people should think about it. And I think that, Democrats should be pushing that idea that, it's in your best interest to have a registry. But, I understand and I do sympathize with the idea of, we don't want the government knowing our, because the whole purpose of the Second Amendment was to avoid tyranny from the government. So having the government have a registry of all the guns is a little spooky from that perspective. But I think, just in terms of practicality, it's a better idea.
All right. We were going to get to the, actually, we'll discuss it really, really quick. Germany, solar power, United States. Fox News had on some kind of specialist who was complaining that solar power doesn't work in the United States because we don't have enough sunlight compared to Germany. Germany is very sunny, therefore solar power is practical there. It's not practical here because we just don't have that kind of sunlight. That is quite possibly one of the stupidest fucking things I've ever heard in my entire life. Germany is a very nice country. It is, however, very dreary and overcast. All right, it is not a bright, sunny country. It has the solar index of Alaska. And Alaska you got to take vitamin D, and they've got freaking suntan booths because you don't get enough sunlight up there. So to say that Germany has more sunlight than the United States is ludicrous in the extreme. I mean, the United States has not one, not two, not three, four actual deserts, real deserts, okay, where it does not rain more than every 3 years. Okay, all right, that's probably a bit of an exaggeration, but not much. All right, Arizona. I know people who live in Arizona, and they've told me that they move. People move there from the East Coast to Arizona. People panic when it rains because they don't know what to do. They don't have umbrellas. They're not used to rain, so when it rains, they're just like, it's like a vampire with sunlight. They literally are confused. They don't know walking through the rain will not make them melt. Their idea of a mall. There's no roof in their malls. They're outdoors. They're literally outdoor malls. You're supposed to not be indoors. That's the whole point, because it rains so infrequently in Arizona. I don't know how the hell they get water there at all, but whatever. Florida is the sunshine state. California, it's all you ever see is bikinis and sunlight.
Well,
that's all it is.
There's two things. There's two issues. And one is you have to separate out, first of all, and I know there are people who are making this mistake. You have to separate out total, are you talking about per square foot? And I know you're talking about per square foot, because that's the more rational argument to be had. But I'm sure there are some people who are actually saying that Germany, tiny little Germany, gets more sun than all of the entire United States, which is crazy in its first.
Doesn't make any sense any way you look at it.
Right. But also Germany is a higher latitude. So at a higher latitude, they definitely get less sun. And then as you said, Germany ends up having a lot more cloud cover a lot more often. So it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy to say. You know what it is? It's desperate reaching. It's desperate reaching that they just don't want solar energy to work. They just do not want to believe solar energy can work no matter what. It can't possibly be, because somehow it doesn't allow them to transfer their money to somebody richer than them.
Right, and it's not a finite resource. It's not a finite resource that you could control. Therefore, you can't have a monopoly on it.
Yeah.
Anyone, and once the technology is relatively perfected, anyone can put a solar panel on their house.
And this is why I say Republicans are not really capitalists. Republicans are not really self-interested as they think they are. Republicans are monarchists. Because that's all they want, is they want somebody else to be more powerful than them. They have to give that money to the oil company. They can't imagine. It has to go to the big oil and coal magnates.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things Germany does is they allow everybody to put up whatever amount of solar panels they want, plug it into the grid, and anything excess that they produce, they get money for it. They get to sell it to the grid because they are now producing, which completely destroys any kind of energy monopoly you might have. Completely destroys it. And no one gets rich that way. Well, all right, it helps the regular people, but that's regular people. We don't like making regular people have money. Right. We like to have a very small group of powerful people have all the money they can get, and everyone else has to pay fealty to them. And the way Germany does it is a complete opposite. Shocking, of course. And it works. People literally have taken their farms and they make more money off of solar farming than they do off of growing wheat or whatever they were growing originally. And if you allow the United States to do that, I mean, you've got tons of land that's just huge open tracts of nice sunny nothingness. People can make a lot of money doing this, but it won't make corporations tons of money. So therefore, we need to discourage it. And you can't control. And once you eliminate the excess cost of energy, that changes the entire equation. One of the reasons everything's so expensive is because the oil companies are raping us. Really, is what it comes down to. They charge more. They charge more for oil. Everything goes up, including the price of milk and the price of bread, because now everything costs more because we need the oil.
If you go back to my theory that we should allow the red states to destroy themselves and we should do everything we possibly can to get the blue states to do the things that the blue states know will help, I personally believe that the entire Northeast corridor, should start an energy collective and start putting up solar panels and wind farms, and using it to to sell cheap energy to our own citizens. And then just like Alaska, they don't have a sales tax because they have a socialist system on their oil.
Right.
Where all of their people are benefiting from the oil in Alaska, which Sarah Palin somehow thought that was great, even though it's socialist.
Well, it doesn't count when Republicans do it.
When Republicans do it, it's okay.
It's not socialism.
But like the Northeast corridor should realize, you have all these blue states together. You know what? Start pooling resources to put together a grid of solar and wind. And yeah, we don't have the most solar. Like, it's not Arizona, it's not a desert. We have a lot more cloud cover, but
it's more than enough.
We're certainly comparable to Germany.
Mm.
And we should start doing these things and creating cheap energy, and then just laughing and saying, well, what are you paying for energy out there? What are you paying for energy out there in Utah? Oh, you're paying that much? Well, mine is, I pay my taxes, and that helps to keep the power company going, and so I pay this like minimal amount for power, and then we can laugh at them, and we do
that anyway.
Right, but we need to pursue our policies within our states, and encourage them to pursue their policies within their states.
So turn your states into hellholes. We'll turn ours into working governments, and then you can come and say, "Well, I don't understand. We need money to help our citizens." Well, all right, we're gonna wrap this up. This is the Filthy Liberal Scum saying good night. This is the Fat Smug Bastard.
Good night.
We'll see you next week. Bye.